Well, it's great to be here at Edgeley Park with Johnny Vaughan, Stockport County's Chief Executive Officer. Johnny, you've been in post now for a little over 2 years. A lot's happened in those 2 years, on and off the pitch. Just give us a little summary of how you feel things have gone over that period of 24, 26 months.
You know what, it's certainly been an exciting time, shall we say, like you say, given the obvious COVID issues that we ran into within the first couple of months of Mark acquiring the club. I think we quite quickly realised that there's so many different moving parts to a football club, and as soon as you start getting into the nitty gritty, obviously you've got the first team operations, but you've got a conference and events and banqueting business in there. You've got a ticketing department, retail department. We've got a charity associated to it, and then there's a large stadium and a facility like an ageing stadium to manage and maintain. So it was a lot to sort of get our head around and get into it. But it's certainly been plenty of challenges along the way. But I feel it's only probably now when you sit back and look back that we've actually achieved quite a lot over that period.
Yeah. I mean, the reason we're talking today is obviously the club's financial statement has just been announced for 2021. But there've been some high spots as well, other than what's happening on the pitch and what's happening in terms of the finances. And the big thing, I guess, has been the lease on the stadium. You mentioned this grand old stadium here at Edgeley Park, which is looking spick and span at the moment. But tell us about the lease, 250-year lease. In layperson's terms, what does that mean for the club?
Well, it's effective because of the length of the duration of the lease. It's an effective freehold. So ultimately, the club owns the stadium. You know what's quite important. I'm sure it is it was for us, and I'm sure it is for the fans. Is that the council put a covenant in there that the stadium can only be used for football purposes for that entire 250 years. So ultimately, you know, to summarise, the club has secured football at Edgeley Park for the next two and a half centuries. And it also gives us the ability now to start looking at expansion plans throughout the stadium. And it gives us that control of the money we spend on the stadium is money that is directly owned by the club.
And the negotiations with the council all nice and smooth?
Yeah, I mean, well? to be honest, I think they see the value both in the club and the importance of the club in the community. So yeah, absolutely. I think they were as soon as they were comfortable that there was a ownership structure in place that could financially afford to purchase the stadium and had the right intentions with regards to the plans for the club and the stadium, yeah, there was no issues.
When you look back at, in terms of the finances then for the year, it was up to the end of June 2021 that we're talking about, that specific period. Obviously, on the pitch, you know, finished third in the league, a little bit unfortunate in the playoffs, the FA Cup run as well, big investment in the stadium, the training ground, season tickets were up, everything sounded great, and turnover increased as well, which is obviously good news. But there were some losses, clearly. When you look at those figures for 2021, how do you, as Chief Exec, how do you feel?
I mean, it was probably in and around what was to be expected. I think given the impact that COVID had, the restriction of, well, we didn't have fans in the stadium at all during that season, bar was one game. We expected revenues to be significantly down. There was a few points in there, which is why revenues were up. We had streaming revenue, which is something that we had to sort of diversify away from match day.
You're not kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of commentary for you to do, John. Match day receipts, and then we also had there was grant funding that came in. Retail sales were particularly strong. So I think revenue-wise, we were actually really pleased with where we got to. Losses-wise, it was to be expected. I mean, as soon as Mark's come in, obviously we've got extremely ambitious plans for the club. As part of those ambitious plans, and the first and foremost, number one objective is to get out of the National League. To do that, we're going to have to spend over and above our revenues, you know, to assemble a squad and a football management side and a facility infrastructure for the first team to enable us to get out of that league. Although we didn't achieve that in that first financial year, hopefully we're well on track to do it this year. And to be honest with you, John, I think for the next couple of years we'll be expecting losses because of that level of ambition we've got. If we're looking to fast track through the leagues, we're going to have to, you know, be in for some of the best players. We also want to bring through young players as well, which we've managed to do, in a couple of points across the team. But I think that's probably going to be the story for the first few years as we move towards increasing the revenues across the various departments, across the football club. And then fundamentally where we want to really focus over the medium term is develop that academy infrastructure, which we bring in young players through into the first team, which reduces the cost and obviously transfer fees, but also you're cultivating and you're creating assets there you can then sell on, and obviously brings revenue into the club, and that's really the medium-term goal to make it sustainable.
But you're actually preparing for losses, even if, assuming Dave Challenger does take us to the promised land of the EFL, you'd still anticipate losses even in League Two?
I'd say in League Two there's a big shift. There's a central funding pot from the National League that's around £85,000-90,000 in the National League. As soon as you go up, that jumps because of the Premier League central funding and also the TV deal that the EFL's done. So that jumps up to about 1.2. You'd also expect, obviously, an increase in wider revenues, so hopefully an increase in match day attendances, season ticket sales, retail sales, the food and beverage operation we'd expect to be taking more. But again, when it comes back to the ambition there, when we're in League Two, we'll be pushing hard because the next stop is League One.
I know this won't have been reflected in those figures that we're talking about, but there was also the recent news about Mark Stock converting debt to equity. Again, I'm not a financial expert, but it sounds like good news. Tell us what the impact of that is on the football club, on the day-to-day running.
Sure. When any investment that goes into a football club normally goes in as debt against the club. So generally that needs to be paid at some point over time. For example, Chelsea had 1.5 billion of debt that Abramovich has recently written off as part of the sale. Mark's intention has always been from the outset that the money he's investing from an operational perspective, he'll be looking to convert to equity, meaning that debt, that the club isn't carrying debt that they'll have to pay back at a later time. Naturally, we're talking about stadium expansions and other options. There'll be points in time where we're looking in to bring manageable levels of debt into the club to enable us to renovate the stadium and build a new stand, etc.
I think what's really interesting, I saw the news the other week about agents' fees, and I can remember when I was on the board, we would do everything we could to avoid paying agents anything. And that's mainly because we weren't spending money on transfer fees, and if the agent wanted any money, they'd get it back off the client. That was the kind of way we operated. In some ways, I know that, again, the figures are quite eye-watering, well into six figures, but again, is it a reflection of how far the club has come that you've got agents' fees all of a sudden, something we never really managed before?
I think it's a balance between, naturally we need to keep one eye on that, ensuring that we're getting good value for money, but we've been very active in the transfer market. We're going after, sometimes League One, League Two players. Any transfer deal, there's an agent involved representing the player, and how much you pay them, when you pay them, whether it's front-loaded or not, that all forms part of the negotiation of the deal. And sometimes it's justifiable to ensure that you actually close a deal off, that the agents either get slightly more or that payment's front-loaded, in that first year.
For somebody like me who's followed this club for a long time, I think one of the worst things I ever saw was the academy closing. It's really interesting, Johnny, you've been talking about the academy quite a bit already today, and I think the academy going forward is going to be really important to you, and of course promotion gives it almost a different status, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It becomes even more important.
I think it's a critical point there. I mean, one of the key points that Mark's really passionate about is that development of a youth academy. But obviously there's a financial aspect of it, but there's also there's an opportunity here. There's a great catchment area in and around this area. Obviously you've got two very large clubs, but there's a lot of real quality players.
About three now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of really quality players that fall out of those academies. We want to be capturing those. The problem with the academy and the form of the academy we've been running this year is that we can't register players until they're over 18. So you could bring in, we're running under 13s, under 16s this year. You can bring some players in. They get interest from other clubs. We've got nothing to do about it. As soon as we go up into League Two, There's a central funding pot, so there's grant funding for it. We'll be aiming for a Cat 3 academy, looking to operate 9 teams between under 9s and under 18s. And this will be a real sort of cornerstone of what this club's about and how we look to make this club sustainable.
I think you're already seeing that impact, aren't you? If you just look around the streets, you can see kids now wearing county kits. It's so encouraging, isn't it? It must make you feel proud.
I think, again, it was probably that night against Bolton when you really sort of had a chance to step back and really, a lot of the time you just head down, going about trying to get things done, to be honest. But that night against Bolton, with that full stadium, obviously the nature of the game and the ebb and flow of the game and the passion of supporters, it was just, it's just such a memorable night.
I guess if you're going to do all that, and all of this underpins the first team, it's great to hear, but if you're going to do all of that, the training ground is critical. We've got, I've been there several times, it's a fantastic facility.
You go there for the free food?
I do, and I usually take a Tupperware pot away with me as well. But it is incredible, and all the players talk about it as well. They're so proud to go to work, they enjoy it. Is it big enough? Is it sustainable? Is it something we need to bring back towards the borough? What's the plans for that?
I think it's certainly big enough for now. In all honesty, it's a championship grade quality. Like I mentioned to you before, a few of my friends always say, it's the same facility that Man City won the first Premier League title in, back in 12. So it's certainly got and we've also invested money in it, quite significantly, both in the facility itself and on the pitches as well, getting them really back up to the A-grade quality. But the ambition is to look to secure something in, or certainly around the borough, which would be a mixed-use facility, which would have space for first team, the academy, the community and education programmes as well. We've just recently formed a strategic partnership with the council, and they're helping us to source parcels of land which we think could be suitable for that. But this is a big development. There's a lot of hurdles to get over to deliver that. The good thing is we've secured over the medium term a really good facility that could take us all the way. Yeah. But as always, we have got ambitions to build something that really benefit the borough.
And it's almost a statement, isn't it? If you come back towards Stockport and build it within Stockport, I suppose that's a good statement. But at the minute, you'd say, John, it's hard to put a timescale on it.
I'd say, we've secured Carrington for up to 5 years. Okay. So we're only in the second year now as well. We're really happy.
And you spent money on it, of course.
We've spent money on it, and we're spending a lot of money on the pitch as well. Yeah. I wouldn't have guessed how scientific turf renovation is. I've got a head full of pointless facts at the moment, to be honest, John. But I'd say, the medium-term ambition is to secure that land. But again, it's finding the right land. It's working that through planning, getting the council support for that, and then obviously funding that as well. So, medium-term.
It's been great. Chats with Simon Wilson through the season about getting the right players, the squad that can get us promoted, and I guess your end of it is the stage that they perform on, and here we are inside Edgeley Park, where I often say I could come and just sit and watch the grass grow. It's a wonderful place to be. It's probably not big enough now, though, is it? When you talk about the ambition that you guys have got, what do you see in terms of expansion? What can you tell us about
I'd say, again, is it big enough? It's certainly not big enough in terms of where we want to get to. Now, this year, we're averaging between 6,000 to 6,500, so there's still room for growth, in its current capacity. Obviously, the upgrades generally that we've done have been either in the fan-facing areas to improve the experience of the matchday experience, or in the revenue-generating areas where we can really drive both matchday and non-matchday revenue. Again, what we're undertaking a number of feasibility studies at the moment with regards to potential expansion options. To be honest, there's probably two obvious stands that we'd look to work upon. Again, not without its challenges, and there will be, I'm sure, a load of hurdles along the way, but that's very much part of the plan. And it's something we're working on currently, and equally it's something that this strategic partnership with the council, it has their backing as well, which is extremely important.
Again, I know we're talking about 2021, but we're keen to think ahead, aren't we? And I wonder how insulated do you think the club is against sort of have we recovered from COVID? There's rising energy costs, which every organisation's facing, every individual's facing. Are we insulated against that? I mean, you guys work in property as well already, so maybe that would help.
Yeah, I think it's hitting everyone, isn't it? From you or I, but at home with rising energy prices, the cost of everything seems to be going up. Inflation's rife, and we're feeling it. We're feeling it here. The cost of our utilities has practically doubled. The cost of fertiliser and the sand we're putting in the pitches has probably gone up 60-70%. The cost of a beer, which is disappointing for everyone's. The cost that we're buying from Heineken's gone up as well. So what we're trying to do is just balance between offering a good value experience to our fans, while being aware that everybody's probably feeling the pinch at the moment, but by also ensuring that we're not taking on all that cost that's been passed through to us. And focused on making the club sustainable.
Just finally, I mean, I'll probably go back to the start really here, and I think when Mark Stock came in and you guys arrived, and you looked at that blank piece of paper, a heck of a lot of work. How there's enough hours in the day, I'm not sure, but when you look back now at those 2 years, you must have great pride when you see how the ground has changed, the training ground's developed, the settled playing squad, we've got the right management team. You must be really proud of where we are today. It
feels like it's sort of all coming into play. Obviously the first team plays such a crucial role of how everybody feels about a football club. We're all football fans. Without performances on the pitch, the general mood and vibe around the club can shift as well. That being said, it's coming together on the pitch. We've also really put together a real core group of people who work sort of in the central part of the business, that really care about the hard working, the passionate. They understand what the club is and what it means to the community. We've really built that over the last couple of years, and that's we've got a team really to be proud of.
Brilliant stuff, John. It's always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Fantastic. Cheers, John.